Well, happy Monday night. Guess what? We're live. I'm Aaron here in the Bowtie Treasure Studio. I'm a content creator for Dixie Belle. As always, I'm here to hang out with you, talk chalk mineral paint, Dixie Belle products, you know, all the good things. And it's so great to be here with you. And thanks Dixie Belle for the opportunity to demonstrate and showcase some products tonight. As always, we hope to cover a lot. Every time I'm live here, I want to share techniques that I enjoy and maybe encourage you to go to another level with your creativity or try some other products out. And after a while, you know, that's how we grow and we enjoy what we do. If you love chalk painting, let us know. Let us know where you're watching from. It's always great to hear where everybody's watching from across the world. I'm going to take a moment just to make sure that that I can see everybody's comments, because it's always a lot more fun if I can see what you're doing. If for some reason I miss a question or a comment, I do hope to go back afterwards and look at all those comments that is coming through. I do want to showcase a few things tonight. I have a set of sewing. I have a sewing machine drawer set, and I'm going to call this set number 2 because I already did a set 1 on a live not too long ago. In fact, I just went to my YouTube channel just to go back and double check on the colors that I used on set number 1. In set number 1, which is behind me here, I have used lemonade and sea glass. Now keep in mind that technique is a little different because I did more of a just straight paint, loosely painted with Voodoo or Van Dyke glaze, and you can see the glaze in here. You can also see the 2 different colors kind of peeking through. So this set, and this set's already been top coated with a satin top coat. And this one was a little bit more better condition than set number 2. The other thing I also did since I was on camera is I also made a top to this set. I'm not sure if I could show you a little bit better, and I used a router to kind of die cut it. It was just one of those things that when you get the sets done, if you don't put anything on the top, you can't really use the top. So now I can actually set something on top. So this is set number 1. We're going to do a slightly different technique for set number 2, and I've already got started a little bit, and I want to walk you through that tonight here in the Bowtie Treasure Studio. This is the project that I'm working on tonight. So this, what you're seeing on the left side of the screen is basically me after I cleaned it with White Lightning, and then also, and rinsed it with just a clean rag. You'll notice on the top shelf is missing the decorative front. Again, this was the set that needed a little bit more work. I also needed to glue on one of the decorative floor side pieces. I wound up having even to use some clamps and things to really get it, because these things, you know, they're 100 years old, they start drying out. But that's the before I primed it, and then this is actually me putting 1 coat of vintage duck egg. Before that, I did 1 coat of gray boss. I really like gray boss. So that after I cleaned it, glued everything on, I used gray boss and then used vintage duck egg as my base color. So that's the progress for this piece, just to get you up to date. The other thing that I've done, and I'm trying to work in phases here. So this right here, let me show you the before and after. The top version is just 1 coat of vintage duck egg, and there's nothing wrong with doing 1 color and stopping and calling it that's it. Some people might just do that and maybe distress it. You know, debatable whether distressing is, you know, the latest fad or whatever. But anyways, that's vintage duck egg. This right here is a wash of mermaid tail, and you can see how it changed the shade of it just a little bit. So I want to just talk tonight about different ways to take it to the next level or add more depth. And the first thing that I did was a wash of mermaid tail. And the reason why I did that was because I wasn't sure if it's going to set and dry fast enough. I will do the mermaid tail wash to the other pieces. I'm going to show you that tonight, but this is just going to be just in case I don't get it dry enough, next step. So this technique tonight, compared to the piece behind me, that was loosely painted. We're going for more washes and layers on this one. I'm not going to glaze it. I'm not trying to make the 2 match. But the only thing they have in common is that I did use, I believe it's sea glass on both of them. And I do have sea glass for this one. So we're gonna get going. How about it? So let's put this one to the side. This is the one, this is step 2. And let me show you this one. All I used was just a little mixing bowl. You've probably seen this little bowl. I don't even remember what the bowl had in it when I first bought it. Maybe butter? I don't know. But this thing's many years old. Probably as long as I've been doing projects, 7 years or so. But I just put a little bit of mermaid tail in there and just poured some water. There's no magic amount. It's really what you feel comfortable. Do you want it really wet or really dry? And so I'm just gonna give it a quick mix. And then let me bring you all in a little closer. The only thing that we're trying to accomplish here is literally just get a wash. Every step that I do tonight, it could be the last step almost. I'm gonna say that because you stop when you feel like you've accomplished the look you want. I am an artist, but I don't use Dixie Belle paint as an art medium much. And when I say art, like painting a portrait or canvas, but it really acts a lot like watercolor when you wet it down. So right now I feel like I'm painting in watercolor, and you can see how you're gonna get different amounts of paint. I'm using Dixie Belle's craft brushes, the 1-inch. You can keep a rag nearby if you want to remove, or it's getting a little too drippy. I would say maybe try the back of the piece first to make sure your mix is where you want it to be. Because if for some reason you didn't get your mix right, you could technically just paint over it again with vintage duck egg and start over. It wouldn't be that much extra work. And by the way, you may notice that on this set, each piece has a slightly different knob. I didn't have a bunch of matching knobs. The one that I finished up on the top is an original knob, and these two are not. But that's kind of the beauty of this project, is everything's almost like rescued and repurposed. Not repurposed, but I'm not trying to be original with it. This is fun because you can really let the drips happen. Your call if you want to have it extra drippy. You can always have a rag handy and just like stop some of the drips, and it will add some texture. You'll probably see me doing that. And if you watched enough of my videos, you've probably seen me use a wet or damp rag on many of my techniques where I want to add some texture or control some dripping that's happening. That's really what we're looking for. So the more water you add, the more dripping you're going to get. But keep in mind, for tonight's technique, this is not going to be the final finish. So it's quite all right if some of that happens, because I'm still going to cover some of that up. And I have my heat gun if we need to pull that out. Cherie says she loves painting these little drawers. I would agree. Anytime you can get them. In this case, the sewing machine, the cabinet wasn't really usable anymore. I think I sold the sewing machine itself separately because I really couldn't do much with it, and I have already caught a couple of them, so I'll let somebody enjoy it. But I'm going to use these well, my wife's going to use them for storage. I asked her the other night if she'd like to have them. She thought she could use them, so. But if not, they're really creative. People like to use them. You can put little hanging hardware on them and hang them, stack them, whatever you like. You can even see right here a little bit of boss showing through, and that's okay. I oftentimes will let boss be a color. It top coats with the best of them, so why not? All right, you can see how quickly I let that go, and notice that there is even some pulling happening. That's okay. It'll take a little longer to dry, and if you're in a hurry, then you might want to just dab some of that extra water up so that it dries a little quicker. With a little bit of a heat gun, you should be able to knock these out pretty quick. All right, so that's paint-wise, that's step number 2. We'll put this wash to the side. I don't think that I'll need it again. I'm gonna clean out my brush just in case I might use it. It still has a little paint in it, but that's okay. So this is step 2. I painted it about an hour ago. It's all dry, so we're good to go. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to add a brush on coat of, what do my notes say? Rebel Yellow. Rebel Yellow will act as our complement color. It still has somewhat of that pastel, light, soft yellow. And so we're going to, now this one I'm not going to do a wash. You could do washes for all of it, but I'm kind of switching up between each layer. And I'm going to use Dixie Belle's flat small. It's a perfect size for this project. I could use another craft brush, but for the most part, that's going to give, to me, the craft brushes just don't have as much strength as the larger brushes, and I want a nice firm brush for this technique. Now, some options you can choose here. You could mist this to make it, in fact, let's do that. I'm going to mist it. It's going to make the chalk paint slide on smoother. If you don't, it's going to be more like a dry brush. And I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the word loose. And remember again, I used some mist because I want to keep it somewhat smooth and not dry brush feeling. I'm also not going to paint in on all the grooves, almost like we're streaking it. If you want, use your mister bottle and maybe encourage some dripping, some streaks. I want to keep this almost feeling a little bit more, well, I think I used the word watercolor, but loose, organic, soft. So I'm not putting a lot of paint on here right now, might just swirl that in there. Keeping my misting bottle handy so I can avoid really heavy brush strokes. I think that's gonna look good. You can see some of the dripping happening. Just to encourage it. Remember, we're building layers here. We want this to feel washed as opposed to dry brush or heavy. Okay, so my paint's really dry, so I just literally just tap the top of my paint in my container. This side does not have a decorative design, so it's just straight. Just a little bit of misting. I want some of these. You can see it's starting to run there. I have one more color to do over this, so the word that I would just say we're building here is depth. When you put 3 thin layers on top of each other, you will end up with almost like a mysterious effect because you don't know exactly was it. At this point, you won't see that I used any vintage duck egg, but without vintage duck egg, we won't have the look we have. Does that make sense? So it all has to be done in order for you to have the finished look. Now, here's another alternate method. You could use your rag again. And do you see how I added some texture? Instead of having long streaks, you could put a little bit of, and I always feel like my rag is a great way of doing that. I did not use a rag on, I don't believe, on the set number 1. I'm liking how that's working for sure. Okay. So as I mentioned before, you could stop your project after each of the set I've done. So the first set, I used mermaid tail to darken up and just wash over the vintage duck egg, I could stop there. But hopefully you agree that the next step just adds some more interest. I could stop there. I'm not going to, but we could. And you'll notice that each drawer that I do, oh, is that the first one? This is the, it's a little wet, so this is the one that we might want to put a little bit of heat gun on. The cool thing is, and we talk about it a lot, you, if you don't like it, paint it over. It takes you maybe 2 minutes to paint these, so I don't feel too sad if things don't quite work out. I can't say that I've ever repainted, I say that, but not like I've ever done that. Because this is not something I'm expected to, that I have high expectations of exactly how I know it's going to work out. That's the fun part. Unlike the, go back to it just to talk about it. Unlike this set that I showed at the beginning, I knew I needed amethyst blended into caviar. That's the look I needed. So I kept, you perfect that look, as opposed to this one. It's a nice surprise. You just discover as you go, and that's the fun part about painting small home decor and furniture is it's your vision coming to life. I gotta remember misting was a big role in my last piece, so I don't want heavy brush strokes. I want light, almost wet, drippy. So that's the goal. If you need to, keep the other one nearby so that you can keep an eye on how things are matching up. Like, was I heavy-handed? Now, we're not trying to match them, but maybe I need to put a little bit more yellow, Rebel Yellow on the piece because I got too light. That's something you can even self-evaluate. I do have a small Lazy Susan. I should have set it up tonight so I wouldn't have to keep turning it like I am, but that's okay. Most of you don't have those sitting around anyway, right? Pushing that paint in there. Light hand. I'm using a very light hand when I'm doing this. I'm not heavily pushing anything. And the other thing that we also did on the last one, which maybe I'll do towards the end, is did a little dabbing of the rag. You ever do that? You get the technique down in the first one, and by the second one you forgot 2 or 3 of the steps. You're like, oh yeah, I forgot. Happens to me all the time. I get in a hurry and I miss a step, and it irritates me to no end. I'm like, I can't believe I forgot that, but I'm always in a hurry. So here, I'm gonna bring y'all in. Make sure you guys can see the texture really well. So we'll do the back, and then we'll come back with our rag. I'm not sure if you can hear me use the squirt bottle, but just really, I'm using a very quick spritz as opposed to a long, held out spray. The bottle is continuous, but sometimes you just need a squirter, so it might be the difference between just a tap versus hold it down. I'm not holding it down. All right, so let's put a little texture, and you can always come back with the misting bottle and wet after your texture. That'll also change a little bit of it. You see how I'm just taking that up? Not a lot, just enough to take down some of the brush strokes and add just a little bit of depth. And that's really all I'm doing on that, okay? So that's 2 down. This one's still drying, is it? Yeah. I tell you what, let's do. We'll do one more, and maybe by the time we get this one done, that one will be really close to not needing much more work, and we can go to the last step. I'm only planning on 4 colors, so before we will have the technique done before the live is over, so you can see the whole picture. There's so many other ways, options you can take with this project after the steps we'll have done tonight. Whether it's glaze or gilding wax, you could line the drawers, but I really like the old wood personally. Not a lot of paint here, just enough to drag it lightly across. A little water, keep it wet. And there's something beautiful about the Rebel Yellow. Just brings a lovely warmth to the whole overall piece. We talked about it. I mentioned a lot about complement colors. How essential they are to projects. Not required, but really do put a little bit more on the decoration. I like to call my rag the eraser too, because oftentimes I'm erasing paint. It's almost spring, at least here in Florida. I think we hit 80s on Saturday. I know a lot of people are still in the cold, but here we're already thinking about Easter and St. Patrick's Day and all the other fun spring things that we do. You like flamingo with those colors too? Yep, that's a good choice. All right, so I'm just doing a last check of anywhere I might want to put a little bit of texture. We'll have some really beautiful happy drips going on. You can dab with a sponge, paper towel, whatever texture you want. And I'm gonna put that over to the side. Almost lost it. Love how that's coming out. Hope you do too. So we have one more color to do, and that's sea glass. Now I've picked my 4 colors. Not, I don't know if I'm sure I've talked about this a decent amount, but whenever I'm doing these techniques, it very much is a creative exploration. And what I mean by that, I don't know exactly how the technique is going to look. So I pick the 4 colors before I go on live saying those are the 4 colors I want to use, but I really do like the look of this. I think I could stop right here, but since I said 4 colors, we're going to try 4 colors. Because I know how to accomplish this look again, so we'll do one with sea glass, and if we love it, we'll do all of them. If we don't, then I'll stop and we'll evaluate. Sometimes you also don't know until the piece is completely dry how the colors are going to dry and develop. And I say develop, turn darker, turn lighter. You could do this technique with Terra. It's a little bit more difficult because Terra reacts to the water, like the previous layer starts mixing in. But you can definitely try Terra with this as well. You cannot do this with silk because silk does not like all the extra water. So you can see how that would change based on the medium. I'm going to get a different brush. Now, on my notes, my last step is a wash. So we're going to do a wash just because. Now, the disadvantage right now is that my paint is a little wet, so we may have to dry one. I'm just going to take a little bit of color, and I probably could do this with my brush, but I'll just do that. So just a little bit of, just get some paint on there. And I usually just go to my mist bottle and just pour some water out. Right, so probably more water than I needed, but isn't it part of the creative process just to wing it though? If you're over here measuring how much exact color, I don't know, maybe that takes the fun out of it for me. I just know I want to wash, so to me wash means lots of water. And I think if I had to measure, I'd be like, I don't think I want to do this finish, right? Okay, so I tell you what, let's do a 30-second dry, because I can still see some shiny paint, and shiny paint means we're going to be mixing colors, and I don't really want to do that. So this is sea glass, which is a very light teal. So it's going to look like it's just very light, and there's not a lot of paint. This, again, as I mentioned before, is totally optional. But what I think I'm going to do here, it's like I'm whitewashing, but I'm using sea glass, is I'm going to use my rag a little bit more often. It's just going to take that intense yellow and just pastel it a little bit more. Let me see if I can show you the difference. So the bottom has been washed, and so it's softer, and then the top one. They all still have their own character. You can still see the washes from the mermaid tail. You can still see, but it's a little bit softer. So that's the beauty of the light color. I almost grabbed dusty blue or anything that's really light. And I think we're doing great. So I'm just going to continue with this. All I'm showing you here is how to create somewhat of this washed old world look. And I've done it before on different projects, and it never fails to just come together. I have a vanity in my guest bathroom that has a little bit of this technique. It's been a while since I've done it, but this is probably one of my top 8 finishes I like to go to, just because I like the creative process. I like the creativity, the depth. So I encourage you to invent your own style of this, but remembering that no matter where I stopped tonight, it would have been okay to just stop there. I am not using my misting bottle. This is so wet, it doesn't need more wet. So you can imagine we've been here together for 33 minutes, and I've practically refinished all of this with you in just 30 minutes. And we've created a very stunning look. So we'll put this one to the side. It looks like this one's mostly dry, so we'll keep going again with the same technique. I've got a little bit of puddling across the bottom. I'm not going to take the time to heat gun this one. And I'm not putting a lot of paint on it. You know, I'm not overworking. I don't need the paint to get in all the crevices. Just wash it like you own it. I'm just, wash it like it was 100 years old and it's worn out and faded and the sun has washed out some of the paint. If you watch set number 1 on my YouTube channel, this set, they're both the same, from the same sewing machine. This set, I used Howdy Doody hemp oil. So you can really appreciate and see. You can see how beautiful the wood grain is. This is just, all I did was clean this and then use hemp oil, and it just brought out that true color. I made the top part, okay? I mentioned that early on. So this is my work up here, and I stained that with Dixie Belle's No Pain Gel Stain. But you can see this set, I've not done anything to, and it definitely is drier. So Howdy Doody hemp oil, between the two, it's amazing how much of a difference. And this still looks, it just has a nice, it doesn't look dry anymore. The colors come out. So I'll do that on this piece here. I usually just brush that on, or you can apply it with a rag and then just wipe off any excess. You don't want any hemp oil puddling If you need to put more than one coat, let it sit a while. There's instructions on the hemp oil container if you're unsure about that. But let me encourage you to check out the hemp oil. I really, really do like the wash. It's just kind of giving it a little bit of a subdued, soft, washed with sea glass, not washed. So if I bring this up close, just look at the depth where you can still see the Rebel Yellow. You can still see dripping, and it just all is coming together for a nice classic look. I think this is a classic, just almost vintage cottage would be a good way to describe it, as opposed to maybe a antiqued. That one I would call it antique. This one's be a little bit more, almost like, this would be great also in a vintage provincial piece. I think that would be really cool. You can do this, and it really is a fun project. You pick your colors, you pick your mood. If you're trying to match your home decor, pull out some colors, pull out your color chart, mix and match. I do recommend, probably my technique, theory, or color choice is pick a neutral base color. Just something that Vintage Duck Egg is neutral when it comes to value. Then pick a dark color, pick a complement color, and then pick a light color. That was the logic for my 4 choices. So base is neutral, dark second, complement third, and a light color wash. 3 of those colors were all in the teal family. So if you're looking for your own color palette, use that 4-point logic, and I think that'll help you build the base for your piece. So. All right, I think that's it for tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, you stay creative, stay awesome, and we'll see you later.
That's the end of the show. Make sure you subscribe and ring the bell before you go. Bye.